agenda, and maybe start with another speaker, with Margarida. If you agree, Margarida from the Commission, European Commission, after our very brief presentation of the from the coordinators of the ALCONET and EULAC-FOCUS project.
Okay,
first of all, I would like to welcome you all to this activity, and I would like just to mention very briefly that ALCONET project is a funded project by the 7th Framework Program. So we are just at the end of this project, and we are finalizing our activities in November of this year. What is important to mention is that the main objective of ALCONET is to establish a European Union and Community of Latin American Caribbean States platform, bringing together actors involved in research and innovation, including also the identification of topics of common interest, strategic activities, and how to give support to the senior officials' meetings in a framework of the EULAC policy dialogue. So, in this sense, we accepted very pleased the invitation of EULAC-FOCUS project, in which we participate also as MINSIT, to make somehow a synergy related to this activity, this web conference on research infrastructures, which is a new topic in the framework, or a new pillar in the framework of the EULAC regional cooperation, research and innovation, and in the implementation of the common research area. As you all may already know, during last SOM meeting in Brussels last March, a new working group on research infrastructure was established with the objective to ensure bi-regional policy coordination and sharing of good practices in policy development and mapping of research infrastructures. So in this sense, this new pillar was certainly included in the EULAC-FOCUS project activities, and in this sense, the coordinator, Dr. Ramon, will give us a better approach, a better information about this new activity. But what is important to highlight now is that the objective, the general objective of this web conference on risk in the framework of this particular project is just to generate a space of discussion and brainstorming around this nominated hot topic, which certainly will give us the opportunity somehow to bring an input to the activities and the framework policy discussions that are going to take place during the meetings of this new working group on research infrastructures. So, having said that, I would like just to give the floor to Dr. Ramon to present very briefly the EULAC-FOCUS project and the main objectives and outcome of this activity. Please, Ramon.
Hello, good afternoon. Very briefly, because I have a lot of respect for this electronic and informatic victory.
Okay.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, and now we see you.
Do you hear me?
Ramón, ¿nos escuchás? No te escuchamos a vos.
Yes, I'm talking now. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, it worked before. Does it work?
Yes.
Yes. Let's go.
Hello, does it work?
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes, Ramón.
Okay, so I'll continue. because I've been told that this system is able to know who is speaking and puts him on the screen. But very briefly, EULAC-FOCUS, as most of you know, is the project selected to develop a 3.5-year project on giving focus to the social, scientific, and cultural dimension of youth-EULAC relations. The original proposal that was selected by the Research Executive Agency of the European Commission was slightly modified at the request of the European Commission, and in particular of DG Research, in order to give it a still more policy-oriented development and outcome. We received yesterday the evaluation from the first year of activities of our project that most of you do not know yet. And there it was already also recommended to us to increase and strengthen all activities that give outreach and allow for external participation in the implementation of the project. So from this point of view, an activity like the one we are inaugurating today is perfect. So as I don't know whether this has gone through or not, this is all on my side, and then I will give all the commands to Monica and our friends from the WinFit to direct this webinar. So go ahead, Monica.
Thank you, Ramon, for your comments and for your introduction. And I would like just to know whether Margarida Ribeiro from the Commission is now ready to give a presentation from ESFRI. Margarida, you there, please? Or Mina?
Yes. Well, okay. Actually, just a small remark. We are here to present how Europe has provided a European approach. One of the tools is actually ESFRI, as you know. It's the strategic forum that represents member states and associated countries with senior policy officials. But ESFRI is one of the pillars, of course, but we have supported this integration through the work program. We presented a small presentation with the main issues that ESFRI has been pushing for, and but I'm also part of the ESFRI secretariat in the Commission, so we can present a bit of both, because I think what you are more interested in is how Europe created this regional approach. So concerning this, the way that Europe has consolidated a research infrastructure policy, I just picked up some small numbers that could highlight what were the main initiatives in Europe that created this European approach. So you can see that member states started developing national research infrastructure roadmaps. There are now 21 member states and 4 associated countries who have developed these roadmaps. And they have done this in order to link better with the ESFRI roadmap, but also to get structural funds access facilitated. Because when you have a national roadmap, you are identifying the main priorities in research infrastructures that you want to invest. So that facilitates national funding and also the use of the structural funds at a European level. So concerning the ESFRI roadmap, we are now already developing the 2018 roadmap. ESFRI is a member state-led initiative, and it's a forum that member states sit together to discuss how their national priorities will become regional initiatives. And that is one of the main goals that the ESFRI roadmap has, to landscape what it is there in Europe and see how they could coordinate those efforts in building or developing new infrastructures. When I refer to research infrastructures, they are facilities which are distributed with different nodes in member states, but also single-sited. So the European spallation source, for instance, is a good example of a single-sided infrastructure, but the biobanks in Europe are also connected through a distributed infrastructure in the S3 roadmap. So from the part of the Commission, we are trying to put the efforts of the funding in implementing these projects. Together with member state alignment of funds, we are also pushing for the implementation phase. So we have different calls that also support the development of new services, the international outreach, the innovation. So this is quite known if you know how the research infrastructure work program is developed in the Horizon 2020 and also in the previous framework programs. Another policy initiative that we launched was the publication of the Charter for Access, which is a charter that has some guidelines on how to structure the access modes and how to frame the access to research infrastructures. The idea is to harmonize the concepts and the types of access so that it's easier to facilitate transnational access from researchers from one country to the other country. Another policy instrument that we launched some years ago was the regulation. So there is a European Research Infrastructure Consortium regulation, the ERICs, which are consortiums of member states and associated countries that developed a single European legal entity to have their voice in several fields. So currently there are 14 ERICs already established in different fields. In the health area, there is ECRAN, the clinical trials, the biobanks. In the physics domain, there are several. There's the spallation source. In the social sciences field, there is the ESS, the social survey, SHARE. There are several of them. There's a list in our website that you can consult. And these were legal entities that were created by member states to align their priorities so that they could grab funding from different national sources, regional sources, and also the European funds. Through our grants, we also fund a transnational access scheme within the Integrating Activities instrument. So we have in our grants mechanisms so that member states, researchers from one member state can access another infrastructure, high standard infrastructure in another member state. That is a scheme that started some years ago, and it has currently in FP7 numbers, it had 24,000 users. It's close to 32, I think, currently. So, and besides that policy dimension, we also, of course, use the research infrastructures as a pillar in all of the joint scientific and technology dialogues that we think is relevant, so that we can foster cooperation through these infrastructures that in principle are more stable than a project. So the idea is that we have a long-term vision on what we want to achieve with these regional priorities, and that we approach cooperation partners and develop new partnerships. This doesn't mean that we own these infrastructures. This means that we structured the environment in order to make member states act more closely when they invest in these infrastructures. So the idea is that Member states, they own these infrastructures, but they also group with other member states and third countries when they start these developments. This is an idea that was launched. It ramped up in 2002 when ESFRI was created. The first roadmap is one of the major pillars in this. And we thought that it's a good experience that we have at a European level that could be taken on board from a CELAC perspective. As you know, when we developed the ERA communication in 2002, one of the pillars of this European research area is actually the research infrastructures. So in this case, when the JIRI dialogues continued on a common research area development, one of the things that was thought as interesting from both sides, European Commission and also the counterpart, was to have the research infrastructure component a bit more developed there. So the idea is to avoid duplication of efforts, and I know that you have much more than 28 member states than the ones that we have. You have different regional capacities, which in Europe you also see with the debates on widening and the debates. So we are not all at the same level in terms of member states, but that makes this dialogue even more interesting, because as most member states don't have the capacities or even the investment levels to develop these infrastructures, they join forces, they have a win-win situation, and they can build these endeavors together. So when ESFRI was created, and you can see in the slide, it was an informal body of representatives of member states. In case I'm going too fast, you can nod. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Margarita, perfect.
Okay. So I was starting to explain more or less what ESFRI has accomplished in terms of being a member states platform that has allowed us to explore how these endeavors can be more consolidated. So in the end, it acts as an incubator of new research infrastructures. It has a mandate. Actually, it's a good example of what now the CELAC counterpart is acting to. So the idea, the first stage of this working group that was created, as Monica was referring to, the first step was to launch a kind of an identification of the regional priorities, and that can be done only if you have sitting around the table the senior officials that manage research infrastructures agenda in their own countries, and that can build up what is a regional roadmap, what kind of initiatives could go a bit beyond the national borders. And that is what ESFRI did with this mandate that they got in 2002. They had this mandate to explore the possibility of having a European roadmap and to follow up the implementation of these projects. The idea is that, of course, you start this roadmap and then there is this commitment at a high level being put forward. So you have a handful of new things that probably they were already ongoing at a national level, but they build up as a regional initiative. From our side, this is very important because the way that we see research infrastructures, we don't see them as a European effort. We see them as a member state and associated countries effort because they are the major funders. But we, the European Commission, we punctually support them to prepare the design studies, to develop their transnational access schemes, to support their international outreach, as you know. So I know that some of you are quite aware because they were involved in advisory groups. You know that the work program is developed as a toolbox to support these infrastructures, to integrate the national communities, but member states own these infrastructures. That is something that is quite important for us to advocate, because in the long run, from the CELAC part, well, CELAC will not own these infrastructures. They are national priorities that are put forward, and then with a regional chapeau, if you want. So from the European Commission perspective again, because I'm here as Unit B4, we see the ESFRI roadmap as a potential tool also for linking up with other global partners. But we have been using ESFRI and the ESFRI roadmap to synchronize national commitments. With that, we have put forward the possibility of member states to develop their national priorities, but also to link up with other policy areas that we have developed in a European level. We also use ESFRI as a big analytical facility, because as ESFRI, as we are working closely with them, they can work with us in ad hoc groups to develop new strategies, to see how we develop new policies and use member states' research infrastructures. So we are working quite closely in a number of issues like the EIC, like the socioeconomic impact of research infrastructures, because the European Commission sees that there is a need to boost, for instance, the sustainability issue and the socioeconomic impact of research infrastructures to foster their visibility in an international level. So for us, ESFRI is an important pillar. In terms of potential cooperation between the two regions, I just show the two slides on the ESFRI projects of the 2016 and the landmarks of the 2016 roadmap, which are interesting for you to see which are the European priorities sitting in this roadmap, but also how they ended up there. So if you have a look, there was some funding for international projects like SCA, so that the European partners would link up with other international entities. That SCA is one of the projects, as you can see. There is one of the landmarks. There is several. There is FAIR, there is ICOS, there is EMSO, which have EuroArgo, which have an international link with other initiatives. For instance, EuroArgo has a good link with the UN Argo project, International Argo project. So you can see that there are a lot of these infrastructures that started with the need to coordinate some efforts. So they are not European per se, they are international, they can be international projects that Europe thought there was a need to coordinate between member states to operate in those infrastructures. So the European Commission role in ESFRI, it's quite known. We are part of the executive board, we are part of ESFRI, but it's a member states-led group. And this final slide was just to make a small interlinkage with what we discussed in this first meeting that Monica referred to in March. This CELAC working group on research infrastructures was something that both the European Commission and the CELAC counterpart in the jury decided to create. And at this moment, it is supposed to be co-chaired by the EU and CELAC, of course. It will be focusing on the implementation of the R pillar in the common research area. So the objectives were discussed between this working group members. There were already nominations from the several CELAC countries to be participating in this group, and also from the member states, European member states counterparts, there will be an involvement. the idea is that the CELAC counterpart also puts forward their regional milestones, their regional initiatives that they see more relevant to coordinate and to cooperate among themselves, and also a timeline so that we can have a bit of an overview with what are the major milestones that we want to reach until the summit, for instance. So this first meeting that the group will have will be probably still to aggregate these CELAC counterpart priorities, so that then we start involving member states, European member states that have the interest to cooperate with the CELAC counterparts as well. So, but that I think that Mina has passed also that message that member states are eager as well to see which are the initiatives and the mapping that is going on at a regional level so that we can move on. And I would just, well, I would be opening the floor for some questions or...
Okay, Margarita, thanks very much for this very detailed and clarifying presentation. And without no doubt, we can assure that we are in the right way in order to continue identifying in the framework of this new working group the successful experience of ESFRI, and of course how much you can certainly facilitate our region, our CELAC region, in order to know which are these good lessons learned and these challenges that you faced in the elaboration of this roadmap and the articulation of this regional also approach at EU level. And of course, we have now the challenge in the framework of this new working group to identify which are these regional priorities for CELAC and start establishing and identifying these methodologies and these processes toward this final objective. And in this sense, of course, Fernando Amestoy will give us at the end of this web conference the vision and the perspective of the situation of our region. But now the idea is just to continue with all the presentations and give us at the end of this meeting 15-20 minutes for questions. So if you have questions, please. Okay.
I would just like to say that we have a meeting starting in half an hour, so we would need to leave in at least half an hour. But we would pretty much appreciate if we could hear, of course, the counterpart, what are their vision, because we think actually that EULAC-FOCUS and this the preparation of their input paper could be a solid basis for both counterparts, the EU and CELAC counterpart, to have a bit of a more in-depth overview of what is going on, what is the landscape. That could be a good input for the discussion. Mina?
Sure, Margarita. Mina, do you want to say something?
Well, I would believe that there is nothing more to add to what Margarita was saying. It's just that we have here a great opportunity between the synergies of ALCONET project and EULAC-FOCUS ahead of the meeting, which is still to be scheduled most likely in September, of the first working group meeting really of the CELAC members together with the Commission. And so it would be very useful to discuss here, but also to follow up on the discussions and presentations here, and especially on the presentation on the regional situation in CELAC on research infrastructures, to follow by some kind of a paper contribution. So we were saying an input paper or a contribution for to prepare the discussion of the first meeting of the working group, which I think that here we have a unique opportunity with the two projects together to join forces and build on the experience of the projects and the participants in the projects to feed the discussion of the working group.
Okay, Mina, thanks very much. I don't know, Ramon, if you want to add something regarding this, the proposal of Mina.
No, the problem I have is how we, as EULAC-FOCUS, are able to convene governments in order in vaguely similar has been done for many years in the EU framework. Because I fear that if you don't convene governments, it will be very difficult to get any information from so many different research centers that have research infrastructures. So I think that there maybe you in Brussels, European Commission and European Union in general could help and should help, because if not, it will be very difficult. Monica is from City in Argentina, and maybe she can understand well the difficulties. I fear that if, for example, we address Argentinian universities and research centers as EULAC-FOCUS, we'll get nowhere unless MinCit takes the lead, not as a member of EULAC-FOCUS, but really as MinCit. This is something that maybe is not up to us to discuss now, but we should discuss. Maybe it was also the opportunity to launch a reflection and maybe a very short document addressed to the groups of work, the senior officials, and in general, the summit EU-CELAC, in order to ask the summit to lead or to give definitive instructions on how to proceed with this. But probably Monica, who has the experience of a minister in an important Latin American country, will know better and could advise us better, not necessarily today, but in the near future.
Okay, Ramon, yes, of course, count with that. Now, if you agree, I would like just to give the floor to Dr. Fernando Amestoy from Uruguay. Fernando, are you there and you ready to give us your presentation about the regional situation on these issues in CELAC?
Hello.
Yes, sí, adelante. Go ahead, please, Fernando.
Enrique. Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Hola, Enrique.
we can hear you. Te escuchamos.
Sí, no, estoy viendo bien. Estoy conectado. ¿Cómo está?
Enrique, por favor, Enrique, si podés desconectar tu micrófono.
Sí.
Un segundo, gracias.
Okay.
Está creo como PST.
¿Sí? Uruguay, ¿están ahí conectados?
Voy a llamar a Jimena.
Fernando, are you there? Yes, you can start with your presentation, please.
All okay?
Adelante, Fernando, por favor, sí.
Can you, it's a, ¿me puedes escuchar la presentación sonido? No sé sonido, si me puede.
Sí, te escuchamos, te escuchamos.
Okay. I said I listened to the and the main the research infrastructure from the UN, and began to Latin America in different in the 10 years in America we've been.
We cannot hear you.
Sorry.
Decirle que no toque el micrófono.
Fernando, sí, hay alguna. We have some interferences. Fernando, please, don't touch your mic, please. No lo toques, así podemos tratar de escucharte mejor.
Hi. Are you listening okay now?
Mucho mejor, adelante, sí, gracias.
Okay. Well, I said in the last decade in Latin America we've been most of all the countries have been working in the development of the national research and innovation system, and in many countries there have been some programs oriented to acquire some technology, to invest some research infrastructure technology, and we've been going on through policy to orient the research agenda to policy priorities. I think that in many countries there have been state and national research programs, and well, they are oriented at industrial development needs for each country, environmental, national environment priorities, health priorities. I think that biodiversity and these priorities are also opportunities to work with the European Commission in many topics. Are you listening okay? Is it okay, the connection? Okay. Good. So from in the point that we are now, that is we need to first to establish a common agenda for all the CELAC countries, and what we are pretending to do in the next meeting that we are going to hold in, I think that in September. That's an opportunity to present national priorities and to try to establish a common agenda for all the CELAC countries. I think that the idea would be to have first a draft discussion document to exchange between the countries, and to have a workshop to interact between the countries and to discuss the draft, just to try to obtain a consensus document with the priorities. I think that's in many countries we have inventories that we don't need to go to the university to have the research infrastructure. I think that the national research councils in the countries or the innovation agencies has actually programs that in order to the universities, in order to access the programs to support research infrastructures, need to to state which equipment, scientific equipment they own, and we have inventories. I think that it won't be a heavy. I think it won't take too much time to gather all the information, because if we take this from the Research Council or the national agencies, I think that's in the discussion we have to have the inventory present, and also the national policies of discussed in each country, just to establish common points, and of course taking into account that in different countries we have different priorities, and I think that the important is to have a biogeographic perspective or an ecosystemic perspective, because we have programs that are oriented to regions, and in the CELAC area we have all the climates, all the geographical conditions, and of course very difficult socio-economical situations and priorities also. I think that the challenge is how we can get from cooperation spillovers on regional innovation systems, and I think that and to find out which points are of best interest to cooperate with the European Commission, and looking for win-win relationships. I think that that's the challenge, and we will have this task in the meeting that we are going to hold. I think that it's September, and I think that it will be we in regional cooperation in CELAC countries, of course, is delayed according to the European Commission standards, because our collaboration, our integration is more immature, and that's why we have higher challenges. So I think that's
okay. Fernando, thank you very much for your presentation. I don't know if someone would like to make some...
Can I say something?
Yes.
I just wanted to make an interesting remark. I think that our chair is quite hit the crucial point, which is maybe the integration is, of course, in a different level, but I think that there is a chance there, because if we did an inventory of the national investments that were put forward in different nations, and the duplication of efforts in some of the instruments, you would see, I'm sure, we don't have that calculation at a European level, that there were a lot of investments at a local level that then did not reflect an international user community to be using those facilities. So you probably are in a different stage of integration, but you have the possibility of aligning the research agendas in a way that you would focus the attention on different instruments and build up capacities in a more coherent way. That is probably a potential that you have, that you could sell as a selling point to these strong endeavors with big investment needs.
I'm sure that
I'm Ramon. Yes, I would like to fully support knowing Latin American integration, and I know it a bit, what the representative of the Commission has just said. You need integration to have common or single policies. But in order to put together information, you don't need integration at all. What one simply needs is the will in each government to first produce a good inventory at national level, and then comparing these inventories at regional level. I say so because if not, we find that anything that we intend to do in Latin America hurts the idea that integration is in a low state in Latin America, when very often this has absolutely nothing to do with the issue under discussion. If Latin American countries meet together at CELAC, one could naively and honestly say that the least they can do is to put together the information they have. This doesn't imply any commitment to any common policy. It's simply knowing where any research infrastructure that can be very expensive can be found. And in big countries in Latin America, one easily arrives to the conclusion that there could be research infrastructure much nearer in another country that considering the distance in the country we are considering. From the south of Argentina, Chile can be much nearer than Tucumán or Jujuy. So simply to put together the information, it's something that's very relevant. And the problem is that I don't know how this message can be sent. And here again, I think that the European Commission could be very helpful putting this collection of information and sharing of information high in the agenda of the summits and the work to be developed in the framework of the summits.
Okay, thanks, Ramon. Another comment, Fernando, do you want to say something regarding this issue?
I am agree with the comments of Ramon. I think that in our workshop, in the inventory is a data. I think that the less that with the countries of the CELAC countries can do is to put together information. I think that I've been working in many countries of South America, and I'm sure that the countries do have the information at national level. As I've said, in national research councils that are having programs to gather information, and research innovation agencies that are putting as a condition of support research that to have to count with the inventories, infrastructure inventories. I think that we can make an effort that to gather the information, and that it's I think that it's the base to discuss, because the most important is to discuss how we orient the research agendas, and the way that we are going to share in two levels the infrastructures, first at CELAC level, and then with the European Commission level. I think that's in both areas we have opportunities. From an internal point of view, from the CELAC countries, I think that we have opportunities just to look for more mobility within between our researchers to take to better take proof of the infrastructure that the countries have. As Ramon said, in many countries like Chile, Brazil, Argentina, there are important research infrastructures that can be that are good to have good procedures and to know the way to access them. I think that in the workshop we'll have the opportunity to discuss the common agenda and to find out in which points to prioritize, to look for, or to have cooperation with the European Commission.
Okay, thank you, Fernando. Thank you, everybody. Okay, let's go now with the third presentation, and we invite Gerd Rucker, In-Road Project representative, to present us the objective of this important project, which is just related to what we have been discussing during this web conference: how to better harmonization and synchronization of priority setting, funding evaluation, and lifecycle management of EU research infrastructures at European and national level. So please, Gerd, are you there? And go ahead with your presentation and your experience, please.
Understand? Can you hear me? Does it work? No. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so I can start my presentation. Thank you very much for inviting me. I have been working in different regions of Europe, Asia, India, Pacific, also a little bit in the new region. I've been dealing mainly with ministries and funding and research organizations, and specifically on the issue of research infrastructure road mapping and supporting of the S3 with monitoring system, and having a background in databases and so forth, that you will see later on how we structure our work. The project I'm presenting here is a rather young project. Okay, you did get my intro? I think so. Okay, yeah. Okay, because I cannot hear you. All right. The project I'm presenting is a young project which hits exactly, I think, the point and the situation where you are in, because we deal on the European side with many countries, with all member states and associated countries, and the European Commission, towards better synchronization of priority settings, evaluation mechanisms, funding mechanisms, and lifecycle management for research infrastructures, specifically those which are relevant beyond the national scale. The next. I tell a little bit how we organize ourselves. Almost 1.5 years old, how we are. Then our vision, objectives, activities. I show you how we put this all together in a logical conceptual framework, and then some outputs and outlook, and then some of the lessons learned. So we are half of a year in operation, but of course we have been in discussion for the proposal for more than a year, and this leads over to some opportunities for collaboration. So having said that, the major picture is we work quite conceptually, and we work on the European side, and this is the side, the other side of the bi-regional dialogue and the common research area where you would like to establish the context and the links. So it would be interesting to link up. In order to represent Europe, we have a consortium covering 13 countries. You see them here, how they are listed. I go quickly through them. We covered most of the western ones. We have many of the south, many of the eastern ones, and we are in contact with others who are not part of the consortium directly. When you come to the organization structure, you see on the left-hand side from where we get our partners. So we have on the left-hand side research funding organizations, abbreviation RFO. Then we have research performing organizations. We have policymakers, and we have other organizations. So you see, we represent the different levels of actors who are engaged in the research infrastructure policy dimension, as well as in the research dimension. And we are supported through an advisory board. Our organizational structure is extended. When you go to the right-hand side, you see a reflection group. That means we have national ministries and funding organizations and operators and research funding organizations in our reflection group, who we closely engage in our project in different activities, because they are the ones who are operating the research infrastructure policy or implementation, and those are our target group, which we directly link to our project activities. Our vision how to build up this synchronization and harmonization of priority settings, findings, and lifecycle management is that we have activities that help nationally to first reflect on own priority settings, evaluation mechanisms for research infrastructures, which could also help to improve the own system. Then we bring information together that one can look across the fence to neighboring countries in Europe and associated countries to see how are their priority settings, to learn from each other. And our third stage is, our third phase is then also to reflect how can we achieve together in a participatory and interactive way, how to increase the coordination on multinational European countries' priority settings and evaluation mechanisms for research infrastructures. So you see, this three-phase concept is built up to gradually intensify our interaction as well as our knowledge on the research infrastructures. Coming now to more details. As I said, we work quite conceptually, and as the topic of this conference is called How to Achieve a Common Language, we strongly work on common definitions and understanding methodological frameworks considering the life cycles of research infrastructures. Because different countries in Europe have quite a different understanding about their definitions of research infrastructures and their purposes of research infrastructures and their criteria for funding and so forth. The consultation, an online survey covering the whole of Europe, all member states and all associated countries, and inquiring certain information. It was directed towards ministries, funding organizations, to involve them and to ask certain questions, I come later to this one, which are relevant, directly relevant for them, and which are again relevant for better coordination at the European scale. We had one workshop, and the next one is planned already, to validate our findings from these consultations and from their studies, and to engage our reflection group from ministries and funding organizations, and later on from research organizations, in order to reflect what we have achieved and to build up the next stage, and to engage them also in the implementation and in the activities in the respective countries. We will go deeper in this engagement and analysis through individual case studies. We selected policymakers to finally identify and run out some best practices in national research infrastructure road mapping, but also on funding issues and on best business case models for research infrastructures. And you can see from the other side, from the later points, case studies are important for in-depth studies, business model development, and different workshops to organize and to have feedback loops with our stakeholders. This is a little bit small, but I think you get the overall presentation later on. But when you look at the details, we specifically on the impacts and on the outputs, I think we have many of the things in common as we promote also more harmonization and synchronization, and also how to better contribute to capacity building and landscape analysis. So there are several similarities on the European scale where we work, and which were mentioned in the previous talks. This is one milestone what we achieved in March this year. We started in January. In March, we had our first definition workshop where we were altogether 66 participants from 28 countries, and most of them from ministries and funding organizations, where we presented our project, where we engaged with them, where we in this way connected with the different governments who are engaged, who have already roadmaps, but others who are in planning, others who do not have. So capturing the whole diversity of them and integrating them at the different levels and the different pathways they are presently in, and preparing them for this kind of consultation, what I mentioned before, in order to address them with their specific needs and for the coordination. And you can see out of Europe, we captured 27 countries in this consultation, in this online consultation, which is presently processed, and where we put information together, for example, what kind of definitions they have for research information, how their national decision-making process takes place, when the roadmap was published and how long is it valid, who are the players in the different countries, what purposes do they follow, how are national strategies, what kind of national strategies do they have in the countries, and how are research infrastructures connected. So you see, we go directly into this subject, we extract this information, and we put everything together in a structured compendium that we have for each country, this detailed information presented, that the remaining countries of Europe can see what neighboring countries do, and as it is a public information source, open access policy from the European Commission, we are happy also to share this document then with you, which could help you already to have one link, one leg in your bi-regional common research area coming from the European countries. And maybe you would like to follow a similar structure or adapt it to your way, to your situation. Here you can see on the next slide how we continue. I don't go into the details, but you see in practice it is like this, that we have several kind of analytical work, and then we go into the workshops to validate it and engage with our reflection group from the different ministries and funding organizations in order to prepare the next steps. Our project will end then with the final conference in 2018. Some issues what we might discuss. As I said before, we work conceptually and we work on the engagement level. And if you try to establish the common research area on the issue of the research infrastructure field, it's quite necessary to talk with the definitions on this and have typologies in mind that we can link up together. So we can exchange on these kind of issues. We can also exchange on how we collected the data, how we analyze or visualize them, and taking up your ideas in order to synchronize with them. And of course, as I said, the kind of best practices which were shaped out from the European countries, how they think could be helpful for different countries who are on different pathways in terms of road mapping, evaluation, but also funding and business models for research infrastructures, we can share with you. These are the, let's say, the practical steps. On a more advisory level or something like that, we could share our experiences in how we develop our collaborative policy framework, ministries, funding organizations, research organizations, for analyzing the research systems, for exchanging, for addressing mutual learning, and reaching towards an increased bi-regional coordination in priority setting and evaluation for research infrastructure. So that's more the structural perspective, or conceptual one. On the process perspective, we could share our experiences, how we develop a corresponding dynamic process to engage the stakeholders in this policy framework. Because the different countries in Europe are very dynamic in research infrastructure policies, and we need to take pace or participate in this kind of dynamics. And we could also share our experiences, how we link up with them, how we engage with them, and how we commit also our deliverables and our services to these kind of dynamic processes. yeah, that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to discuss with you how we can find some collaboration opportunities. And if you have any questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gerd, for your detailed and concise presentation as well. And well, I think it's a very good experience and very successful initiative in which you are working on. And of course, there are a lot of points, strategic points and key points that certainly could give us the possibility to start thinking about how to give us how to help us in the identification of our regional priorities and our framework and methodologies and so on. So now we have a few minutes for questions. I don't know if someone or anyone would like to ask something to the speakers. Any question, please?
I just need to excuse myself.
Please present yourself very briefly. Hello? Any question? Okay. Okay.
Monica.
Well, I have. Yes, please.
Monica.
Go ahead. Yes.
Yes.
Paulo.
Paulo.
Please. Yes.
Yes, Paulo from Brazil, from CNPq. Well, I would like to make a comment. I would like to know if the Dr. Gerd Rucker has begun this kind of work by a previous list of institutions or infrastructures mapping. Because I think they, the national associated or national members countries, they have a kind of mapping in their own country. But did they begin using a kind of preview list to do this kind of work?
Monica is hello? Are you? Huh? No, it's just to add what Paulo is talking about. What we are interested is to know if Mr. Gerd start from a special kind of definition regarding the question about basically typology of infrastructure of research.
Mm-hmm. So what is your exact question, please?
Gerd, did you hear the question from Brazil?
Yeah.
Can you answer, please?
All right, I try to answer because I'm disconnected and so forth. No, we did not yet have a typology of research infrastructures in the beginning. Mm-hmm. We made an inventory and we now base our typologies on the results, what we got from the consultation and also from the desk studies. And we link also up with other kind of projects like the Mariel project. They make also an inventory of European research infrastructures. And so we try to find some commonalities between this project and our project. As I said, our project is more on the area of understanding the different procedures, the national procedures, national roadmaps, and priority settings and funding mechanisms. In order to see what kind of potentials for alignment, harmonization, synchronization indexes, whereas this other project, which I mentioned, Merrill, it's an inventory-oriented project which lists the different projects in which exist in Europe.
Okay, thank you, Gerd. Any other question, please? Well, I have a question from myself, Gerd, and just I would like to know which is your recommendation to select countries according to your experience in the elaboration and implementation of this project. Which could be your first recommendation for us in order to well, how to start with our process of establishing regional priorities and a future regional roadmap.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I think, I think it's quite important to build on work which is already done in order not to reinvent concepts or definitions and so forth. And we take we make use of definitions also from the European Commission, ESRI, and so forth, and see how we can implement them and how we can use them in our work. So I think it's quite important that in order to find a common language, early discussion about definitions and what kind of research infrastructures you are actually talking about when you talk about this common research area. So, for example, we talk about research infrastructures which are relevant beyond national scale, not each and every small microscope, as we sometimes call it. So that must be clear. And also then, if you have the definitions, and if you have a kind of vision also, maybe you have a shared vision as presented in the slides, one can see what kind of stakeholders to engage. So it needs kind of stock take also connected to some data collection, what I put here on the last slide. A stock take, really understanding how the national systems function and what kind of research infrastructures you have. And then, of course, doing some analysis and presenting the material. And out of this, also finding, similar as we do it, in some more intensified workshops, discussions, and again, further analysis. We also plan a second survey specifically on the coordination issue, but step by step. What kind of issues are necessary, what kind of indicators are necessary to discuss, and the policy discussion with European stakeholders. As Margarita has been mentioned, maybe interesting European member states together with the European Commission. What kind of coordination and synchronization issues need to be discussed more at the policy scale. But this policy scale, in my sense, needs to be built on work which has done before, on the definitions, on stock take of national systems and so forth. And I think with this we can help you quite a lot. And also on these dynamic processes, how to adjust to the situations in Europe and so forth, we can also support you quite a lot.
Okay, Gerd, thank you very much, and thank you for your comments and key suggestions. We will take note of all this to prepare our next meeting in Montevideo. Is there another question? Any other question from the Commission? Margarita, would you like to do something?
Well, yes, in terms of what Gerd was presenting, this project is quite an interesting in-depth approach to what we have in Europe. So in the end, I think it's a very detailed methodology. Gerd was presenting it quite exhaustively, and it can add a bit of complexity to the exercise that from a CELAC perspective could be developed. I think that in Europe, what Gerd was referring to is that member states, they have their national roadmaps. The extra push is synchronization. That is why the Commission launched that project to support synchronization of the national roadmaps. I think that is a different step. It's a step forward. And I think it's very useful that our counterparts also know about this project and what Merrill is doing, which is an inventory of the research infrastructures that are operating open access to other member states. But I think that, and as what Fernando was saying, and what the Brazilian colleagues were putting forward, it's really important to have a push from what exists already, what is available, and then probably with a coordinating effort to see what are the major initiatives that would need a regional endeavor. Maybe that is a more practical approach to what a research infrastructure policy coordination could be from the CELAC side. Another thing, as GERD also comes from DLR, I think there is a possibility of also, I think there was an inventory that was supposed to be put forward, no, Mina?
Yes, I remember that we have amended EULAC-FOCUS to support this new pillar of the common research area with the idea that there is a mapping of the national inventories of research infrastructures, which we know that DLR is currently conducting. So it will be very useful also to exchange amongst them, so that very soon we receive more information from DLR on this mapping exercise.
Okay, thank you, Margarida. Thank you, Mina, for your kind comments. Any other comment before closing this meeting?
Well, I think all people have already said, but in Latin America, we have in some countries more restructured infrastructure, and a mapping was already done as Brazil had done our service. But I think we need really to establish a kind of methodology, a kind of directions for mapping, and to have a kind of standard information about, because we have so many kind of infrastructures. We need to know which of them can be used and are available for cooperation, and so we need to have a more standardized information about. So try to establish a methodology, try to know the instruments, and try to see what kind of infrastructures we are speaking. Is very, very interesting to go forward on this.
Yes, you're right, Paulo, and I fully agree with you. Any other comment? Okay, if there are no comments,
can you hear me?
Sorry, who are you?
Monica,
Sophie?
just to excuse ourselves, we would need to leave because it's
mentioning
now
that EULAC-FOCUS did an amendment
so
to better integrate the research infrastructure task. And we are currently working on it, and as Mina mentioned before, we are in close contact to ARCANET as well, and so we have to link to the working group somehow to provide the input and to write. At the moment we are in the state of conducting a desk study, and then afterwards we would like to go more into deep into the analysis by conducting semi-structured interviews with key stakeholders from research infrastructures in CELAC. So, and I think that kind of activities could provide a good input for the meeting in September for the working group. And I think what Gerd just mentioned before, what is really relevant as well to have in mind to see what kind of stakeholders are involved in CELAC. Who are the actors that are really relevant that we should consider as well to include in this dialogue. So, for example, just to conclude, like the interrelations between the different projects, I think it's really important as well to have or to keep an eye on the funding agencies, because ERA-NET-LAC is currently working on a pilot call with regard to opening up research infrastructures on a pilot initiative for marine energy. And so I think we should like keep them in the dialogue as well and include them in the discussions. Yes, thank you.
Yes, sure, Sophie. Of course, this we have to work jointly between the three projects. It's obvious. And okay, another question, another comment.
From Ecuador, are you listening? Do you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes,
okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Monica. Some questions regarding how are we gonna work from now. How is the working group for CELAC going to work? I would like to suggest, for instance, let's update the people that are working from each government, since we have recently changed authorities and we are working with a new government since 2 weeks ago. It'll be important for us to get an updated list of all the people who will be working for the line of CELAC. Other question regarding what Gerd said, it will be interesting to have his work, especially regarding to definitions. What are we gonna understand for research infrastructure and the other definitions that we will be working from now on? Since we're beginning the work, it will be interesting to begin with the same definitions for all, so we all understand for everybody what are we talking about. The other thing, and I would like your comments, Monica, on this, how are we gonna participate, or are we gonna participate on the summit? There's parallel meetings on academic themes. I don't know if the jury is programmed to participate in any part of the summit, or if not, if we are gonna suggest any paragraph for the summit declaration that is being working right now in Brussels. I don't know if you have thought about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ecuador, and well, welcome to this bi-regional cooperation actively. First of all, well, regarding your first question about how to participate in the working group, you have to nominate a representative. Mainly the nominations are related to policymakers, not experts, because this is a working group based on governmental representations. So it's important to nominate a functional which who should have the responsibility in defining and implementing this policy on risk at national level. Your second question regarding the definitions, of course, it's important to think about it, and of course, I'm sure that this will be discussed in the upcoming workshop in Montevideo, because it's a very crucial starting point to think about. And the third one, related to the summit and the paragraphs and so on, well, you know, this responsibility is this is a responsibility of our CELAC presidency, El Salvador. So I'm not in condition to now to answer you about how the negotiations related to this issue are developing regarding the final declaration of the summit. And related to the back-to-back meetings, also I have to say that as far as I know, they are under negotiation between our CELAC presidency and the Commission. So I have no further, comments or news about final decisions. I don't know if Salvador could help us with this information. Okay, if no other questions, I would like just to thank everybody.
I have something.
Yes.
Yes, Monica, listen, it's a very recent piece of news from the last 3 days that EULAC-FOCUS will be invited to a preparatory meeting to be held in San Salvador at the end of this month, the 28th and the 29th of June. And it is a preparatory meeting for the Knowledge Summit that will take place in the first week of October, 3 weeks before the great summit of heads of state of government, EU-CELAC. We are invited there as an observer, but we could have the possibility to say something, at least a word, so that if, for example, on this specific question of research infrastructure or any other specific issue concerning research, there is a very short, I wouldn't say document, but 2 paragraphs that you can put together as an input possible for this preparatory meeting, this could be helpful. This is also some sort of an answer to our friends from Ecuador. If from Senefit there is some view that they consider could be helpful and that fits within the framework of our project, please tell us, because we should have the maximum elements and materials to play a useful role in this preparatory meeting of the Summit of Knowledge in San Salvador at the end of the month. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ramon, for this information and for the support you could give to this initiative and these issues in next summit. Okay, if there are no other questions, so okay, we are just finalizing this web conference, and we would like to thank especially Red Clara, and yes, for the connection, the good connection. It's a very great effort. And of course, we would like to thank everybody for attending this meeting and the speakers for the presentation. And we're going to send all this presentation to everybody, and of course also a very brief minutes about these discussions and clarifying which are going to be the next steps. And in this sense, Sophie from the DLR will give us a very good help. So thank you and goodbye to everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ramon.
Bye-bye.